Hello and welcome. And let's post the socials as usual. I'm partially ready. Right. And then of course the Discord message. And right. So taking hold on, I'm just going to close the door. One second. On the live stream. So welcome to the daily NFT market health analysis. Sorry for the interruption just there. My wife forgot that I'm on the live stream at this time. And where today we're going to, as usual, look at the markets, look at what's going on with the charts, try and figure out, what the hell is going on based on data rather than just vibes. My name is Daniel Tenner, aka Swombat, and I'll be taking you through these charts, which are generated by my server, which grabs the data from Moralis, which gets it from the blockchain. So we've had a fairly let me take down the music. We've had a fairly eventful few days. We had this nice big spike here, which appeared on the top 10, and a kind of drop. We've had a kind of whipsawing going on all the other indices. I mean, you can see it's just like all over the place, and here as well, like. It's just whipsawing, and the women-led projects as well. It's just everything's kind of all over the place in all the other indices. But it's now a couple of days since that mint. So at least what we can say is that, although we can't tell for sure whether the hypothesis that things are going to spill over from this index onto this one and this one and this one, we can't invalidate this. But we can say that it's definitely not happening yet, which is a data point. Like one of the hypotheses, one of the reasons why I track this top 10 is because of this hypothesis that it is going to lead the market, and that liquidity that's freed up by things selling in this index will eventually make its way to other projects. Whether that's true or not remains to be seen. It was true in the last bull market in January. Maybe it's no longer true. We're now in May. It's quite a few months. It's like, I think in NFT years, that's like 100 years later. So who knows, things might have changed, and it could be that only the top 10 is going to accrue all the liquidity and a handful of projects in the other indices, but that these indices are just never going to recover from where they are. I don't think so. I mean, that's not the assumption I'm operating under, but who knows, it's possible as well. Let's have a quick look at the bar chart. So we can see that, yeah, of course, we came down from this peak. That was natural. But the question was, how far do we come down? If we came back down to the level that we were at before, I've said before that that's not a bad level to be. Like, this kind of area is pretty decent, especially if we can sort of stay around 120. That's a really nice level to be. And that's where we've been for most of the last day, apart from this last bar, which has been much lower than the previous ones, but that can only often happen, and somehow my live stream is timed so that it's always the one just before my live stream that's the lowest. Apart from this last bar, everything's been pretty good. This is a really nice recovery. What we're not seeing, however, is any recovery here, or there was a little bit of a bump here, so there's maybe like a little bit of spillover here, maybe, it's unclear, it's not confirmed here. And there was definitely no spillover in this bit. Like this is extremely low volumes, even for the women-led projects. Tiny bit of recovery in the last 8 hours, but it's still definitely not confirmed that volume is making its way towards other indices. We have to keep that as an unconfirmed hypothesis from now that worked in the last bull market, but doesn't necessarily work now. By the way, as usual, please post your questions in the chat while I'm talking, and I'll get to them after I finish doing the charts. Don't necessarily wait until the end. I can ignore them if they're not relevant to what I'm talking about right now. If we look at the top, 10, the sort of longer term chart, we can see that, yeah, like, based on the fact that it's kind of consolidating around here, it seems to, like, maybe it's going to drop a little bit more, and sort of like work around here. That's, if we look at the 90-day chart here, that's actually not is still kind of on a sort of uptrend. It's definitely not a bearish trend at this moment. In fact, if it consolidates around here, that's where we had the last two peaks. So that would be quite amazing if that's where we stay. And I've said before that this level is very bullish. It's a really great level of activity for the top 10 index. It's not been hit consistently and stayed at consistently for quite a few months. And there was a couple of days of that sort of level here in the just after the ApeCoin pump. But even the January bull market did not have like these kind of levels for very long. So if we can actually stay here, which looks like maybe we can, that would be one of the most bullish things that I've seen so far since we started those charts. Of course, it's not guaranteed that we're going to stay here, but these last few bars here, like, they don't look like it looks plausible to me that the volume might stick around here, and that would be very, very bullish, I think, for the market. So that's why I'm still giving it a green dot. And a note of caution that, of course, this is a very volatile time, but it's looking about as good as it could under the circumstances. We were expecting a drop. I was expecting the drop to go much lower and then recover after scaring the shit out of us, and maybe it still will, but this isn't like this thing here is an indicator that maybe it's decided not to scare us quite so much, which is nice. I think we've had enough scares in the NFT markets for a while. One interesting thing I want to point out that I pointed out in my thread as well is like this kind of oscillator that we're seeing with the price. This is a price index, so it's kind of made of all the prices of the top 10, and they're normalized from 0 to 10, like with 10 being the highest price that they've ever achieved, and then it just averages out between all the top 10 projects, which currently are projects like BayC, Bored Ape Kennel Club, Mutant Apes, of course, CryptoPunks, to all the Yuga Lab projects, but also Doodles, World of Women, what else is there? Azuki, Clonex, and a couple of others. And looking at this price index, and I think that the way it's calculated is correct. I don't think it's gone off the rails or anything. It's very flat. I mean, look at this. This is kind of like, it's kind of stayed within this kind of area for like since February or so. And that was after a drop. So around January, it kind of rose a little bit. But actually, if you include this, it's sort of like, there's not like, if this was a buoyant market that's just rising, like, for example, in August, like leading up to August, you can see this kind of rise of the price index as the price is multiplied. Here, I mean, we've not seen substantial growth. Obviously, there's the odd project that goes up but most of the growth has happened before they go into the index, and then after they go into the index, there's not that much growth left, it seems, which sort of tells us that if you were to invest in index of all the blue chip projects, all the top 10 projects, you might not see a lot of growth on average if it's averaging out across all the projects. Obviously, it would depend where you invest. If you invest here or like where we are now, and it continues in this sort of box pattern, then you see some volatility up, and you might be able to trade on that and make some decent profits on that. But if you were going for the long term and saying you bought at some kind of random point here, you'd be roundabout flat, like maybe with a small loss or maybe with a small gain over the last couple of months, really. So that's an interesting thing to observe, I think, about these charts. If we look at the Seneca Old, That one is, well, I mean, we had this beautiful flag pattern that was so nice, and like we're wondering what would happen to it. It's just gone all over the place. This like has gone up, it's gone down below. It's like, who knows what this index is going to do at the moment. We've just had just extreme volatility there over the last few days since the other side mint. I think before we see any sort of pattern emerge here, we're going to need to wait a little bit longer. I hope that what we'll see is that spillover hypothesis. So we'll see so the Zeneca also will see volume coming from people who have sold here buying these projects. But we're not seeing it yet. I mean, if you look at this, it's not here yet. And that's unfortunately quite similar for all these indices. Zeneca New is also extreme. I mean, look at this whipsaw. That's quite impressive. It's like a heartbeat diagram almost. Although I suspect that's probably quite an unhealthy heartbeat diagram. But it's not showing any kind of trend of growth. I mean, maybe maybe this is slightly bullish or something, but it's not very bullish at the moment. We really need to see. There's too much volatility. When it kind of whipsaws like this within the space of a few days, you can't really read a trend or try to read a trend or say, oh well, this bit is a little bit higher than this bit, therefore that must be a bullish sign. That feels a bit overreading the charts there. So I wouldn't do that. And we're still at very low volumes on the whole, which again could, as usual, could be explained by the fact the number of projects here have died. There's all sorts of issues with this index, but at the same time, it does serve as a barometer of, asking, well, all these projects that we said were really good a few months ago, are they is anybody still interested in buying them, or are they just all dying like flies? Right now, they're still dying like flies, basically. We're not seeing a substantial recovery of these indices. We will if our spillover hypothesis does materialize, but right now it's not. So let's look at the women-led projects index as well before I look at crypto. Again, if you have any questions, please ask them. You don't have to. We can have a session without Q&A, but you're welcome to. This one also has extreme volatility with that kind of horrible drop here and then up and down and up and down. You can't really read anything from this other than the fact that it's obviously not recovered yet. I mean, maybe it's on the way to recover. Those last two bars here look vaguely hopeful if you really look at them with rose-tinted glasses, but it's still an index that's very much in the dumps. It's basically touched on volumes as low as it had back here in November, when I think most of the projects in this index were not even running yet, were not even created. So the fact that it got down to this kind of volume is pretty awful, really. So, but it is what it is. I might be looking at some, I've asked on the Hug project, they're curating a list of hundreds of women-led projects. I might go and borrow their list and make an index, a Hug index that's got a lot more projects, and maybe there'll be a different pattern. I'm curious to compare those. But certainly the set of projects that I got from Alice and Claire has just gone down since I started tracking it, basically. It's quite sad. I was hoping that, when I started tracking it around here, I was hoping to see a kind of women-led projects meta that would sort of go to the moon like this. Instead, we've had both in terms of the volumes and, of course, in terms of the price that always follows, just a long, slow decline of all these projects. It's quite sad, really. In aggregate, basically, they're at about 10% of their maximum. That's what the one, because this is around 1 out of 10. If this is 9, this is probably, this is 2. This is around about halfway. It's just over 1. So, in aggregate, all these projects are at about 10% of their original price. It's an average, of course. Individual projects will be different. Same for the Zeneca New, actually. It's pretty bad. Zeneca Old is a little bit higher, 15% or so. And top 10 is more like 30%. So clearly there's some projects which have been in there which have gone down substantially. So it's still a bit better, I guess. Cool. Let's have a look at crypto just for completeness. It doesn't look like there's any questions today, and that's totally fine. Maybe saving up the questions for the project review coming later. I mean, there's not a lot happening in crypto. It's still in this. Sorry, let me try and arrange this a bit better. It's still in this channel. Strangely enough, we're still kind of in this channel. It's at the same time, it's like looking like it might want to escape the channel, but it hasn't. So it's just, I don't know, maybe I haven't drawn these lines right, but yeah, maybe, hold on, let's try and, if we adjust the lines, then it's still completely in the channel. Like if I do like this, right, it's still basically playing with this channel. Today I'll be reviewing Root Troop. That's the project that's selected for today. And so as long as crypto is being boring like this, that's good news for NFTs. There is a worry that it might have a massive correction at some point. If that happens, while that's happening, NFT volumes are likely to just die. So if we are heading into a bull market, it could just be suspended for a little while, or it could just be suspended and not come back. That's always a risk as well, even though the volumes are very good. When we look at the top 10, if crypto just goes nuts, this could just drop, and it could drop and then recover, or it could instead drop and then sort of start trending down. And that's always a risk in these markets that are very attention driven and very volatile. And yeah, there's as I've said in one of my podcasts, like discussed with Gabby, there's a lot of fear, like potential fear in this market that there isn't in say the stock market, because when the stock market tanks, nobody says, oh my god, this shares thing is an illusion, I better sell everything because, you know, how stupid was I to believe that these things were worth anything. The piece of paper that I don't even own, the piece of paper, I've never even seen one of those pieces of paper, and yet I've put thousands of pounds into it. Whilst with NFTs, people do ask themselves that, and they do think maybe this was a collective mass delusion and actually none of this exists, and I better sell everything because I've taken too much risk. And that makes the markets way more volatile than with stocks. Okay, so I think we're getting to the end of this review. I'll put on a bit of music, give a bit of time. Oh, there is a question. Okay, so about crypto, do I think that Bitcoin spends a while in the 20 to 30k zone? It hasn't really spent a lot of time there previously. Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm really not a crypto analyst. I think you want to watch Ben Cohen's channel for this. But I doubt that it would get to the 20 to 30k level. It's possible. If it does, I'll be trying to find a way to buy some more, because I think it's like that would be a great buying opportunity. Although I prefer to invest in NFTs, to be honest, which, you know, from my perspective are small businesses. But it didn't go substantially below 30k, and only wicked at 30k. In those weekly candles back in the summer when it had like a massive crash. So I suspect there's so many orders around 30k that if it just wicks to 30k, it will just bounce back from there. And I don't know, you know, like I can't predict the future, and there can be market manipulation in this. So maybe somebody can push the price at it. Certainly when I was watching some of those things happening here, I remember it really looked like somebody was sitting there like testing the market, testing the resistance, seeing how low they could get the price, and then giving up when the buying pressure was just too much. So who knows, there could be some kind of thing like that. If a bunch of whales decide to dump a lot of Bitcoins, they could dump the market. Like, why would they do that? I guess to buy it back cheaper. Will they do that? I don't know. Like, I can't predict that. I don't think we're going to go to 20 to 30k. I think we might wick down to 30k. That's my guess. And when that happens, while that's happening, probably the NFT market will be not very happy about it. That would be my answer to this. But again, if you want really good technical analysis on crypto, try Benjamin Cohen's Into the Cryptoverse channel. He's really good at that. Thank you, Busy G. I take that as a huge compliment. I don't think I have the level of technical knowledge that Ben has, But then again, in the NFT market, nobody has the level of technical knowledge that Ben has, because it's so new and hardly anybody even does charts, let alone, charting back to, Ben will go and, as some of you will know, Ben will go and chart back to, point out things that happened 10 years ago and compare them to what's happening today. And you can't do that in the NFT market because it didn't exist a year ago. Cool. I forgot the music on when I was talking. Well, anyway, let's have the music on, and I guess that's probably it for today. If you want to see the project review, that will be in about 40 minutes. So at 10 a.m. EST, 3 p.m. UK time. And it won't be technical analysis of charts, but it will be looking at a project in depth, in relative depth, as kind of approaching that project and seeing what my reactions are as somebody from an entrepreneurial startup background. What do I get from their website, from their presentation, from their pitch, etc. So thank you very much for listening, whether you dialed in, which I really appreciate, or whether you're listening after the fact. I hope you got some value out of this, and I hope to see you for the project review, and hope you get more value out of that. There's one more question. How do you see the development of the hug right now? How do I see the development of the hug? I think it's an early project that's still building its core value. I'm pretty bullish on the founders. I would suggest listening to the overpriced JPEG interview with Randy Zuckerberg that came out I think a few days ago, and get a sense from that. If you can't talk to the founders directly, listening to the podcast interviews can be a good way to get a sense of, if the podcast interview is well conducted and asks some reasonably hard questions, I think it can be a good way to get a sense of the project, as long as it's not just all softball questions. What I get from that interview and from talking to Debbie as well is determined founders who have the ability to attract attention to what they do, who want to make a difference to the space, and I believe that they'll work out how to do that well over time. They're trying to build an accelerator. That's a valid model. Maybe they'll pivot from that. Maybe they'll do something else. Maybe they won't. I don't know the future. But I'm still, disclaimer, I'm invested in the hug. I have 15 of them or something. And that's for the long term. I'm curious to see what they do. So thank you very much. Have a lovely day. Take care and see you tomorrow, or see you later. Bye-bye.